There we go. Okay, thank you. So welcome to the next webinar, the next phase of the 2023 Jacobs Teen Innovation Challenge. Thank you for those of you who are able to join us live, and thank you to those who are going to be watching the recording of the webinar. We have today with us Perla, who's the Executive Director of the Jacobs Institute. Lisa, the co-inventor of Packpo, is not able to join today. She's not feeling good right now. But Perla, do you want to say hi?
I'm happy to say hi. Let me move this over here. Hi, it's so wonderful to see you all, and I actually enjoyed the conversation and your excitement. Welcome, and thank you very much for all you do for students. We are excited at the Jacobs Institute for Innovation in Education to partner with you on this awesome endeavor. And I'm super proud of our team, Bianca and Tezeru and Jessica and all the other people supporting it to make it happen. So welcome.
Thank you, Perla. Yeah, I definitely want to resonate on that. We're very thankful for all the educators who take the time to share this project with your students. This is definitely a learning process for all educators. Some of you are doing this for the first time. So, and we'll go over some notes during the presentation, but don't feel that you're behind with any of the timelines. All that curriculum is flexible, so we'll go through that. So to start us off, we have Tezeru, who's leading our wellness activity. Who's going to tell you about a new activity that you can also implement with your students.
Thank you, Bianca. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Packful webinar on the Jacobs Teen Innovation Challenge, focusing on prototype. The prototype phase comes, the prototype phase comes after students have 1, understood their UN goal through research, 2, generated ideas through imagination, and 3, create something, whether tangible or not, in response. And in actualizing an idea from their brain, the first prototype students create may not look like their final prototype. And not only is this acceptable, but it's expected, and it's natural, and it's the way things flow in the design thinking methodology. So unlike situations in which students are made to feel defeated or bad or ashamed by a failing grade, this type of discovery is actually celebrated as a means to reflect and take action to do better. So for today's wellness activity, we will model how to support students in embracing failed attempts during the prototype phase by reconceptualizing failure as another opportunity for growth. We will first do this by participating in an activity. You can do with your students and customize however you see fit by adding arts and crafts or different ways of creative expression. But so first, I'd like for us to participate in this activity as a way to not only engage failure as a part of life and something we can overcome, but also as a way to model it for your students. So take a moment and reflect on a time where you feel like you failed at something. And I understand all of our definitions of failure may vary, and we will also talk about that on the next slide. So I'll give about like 30 seconds for you all to think about a time in which you feel like you failed. And then also, what did you learn from that failure? And how did you do it differently the second time around? So first, think about the failure. Okay, I'll give you a couple more seconds. So if we've, Bianca, can you stop sharing the screen? Thank you. If we all thought of a failure, put a heart in the screen as a reaction. If you thought of a failure. Wonderful. The reaction. So yeah, this could have been an activity you were trying out with your students, a recipe you were exploring, or when you had misread directions on your way to a new site. Maybe you lost something like I did over the weekend. Okay, great. Okay, now what I'm super interested in is learning about what you all learned from the failure. And so without mentioning what the failure was, I'd like to open the space for folks to participate and mention what they learned from the failure and how they did it differently the next time, or how they would have done it differently the next time. And you can feel free to write that in the chat or unmute yourselves. But again, it's what's the wisdom you gained?
I can start if that helps with breaking the ice.
Thank you.
Yes.
And so again, you don't have to mention the failure,
Okay.
just the wisdom.
Okay. I think that I learned that there's some things that are beyond my control, and that it doesn't matter how much effort, energy, and love I put into something. At the end of the day, there's many variables in place, and it's not directly related to my ability, my capacity, my fitting or not, right? And to be able to understand that and let go and see that as something that is part of living and that is part of learning that process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mayumi, for sharing that. And so knowing that you can only control what you can control, how are you going to do this differently the next time? Like, what are some things you will change?
I think that honestly, I wouldn't. I feel that I still want to be passionate about what I do and give it my 100%, knowing that there's many factors in place, but I still want to, be fully on board in something that I want to experience or that I want to obtain.
Wonderful. I love that. Yes, can we hear from one or two more people?
I put this in chat, but I didn't quite do it right to get it out to everyone. But I had a situation recently where I had a plan in place, and I learned that I really need to be flexible with my thinking, and what I thought was the solution and the right thing to do, wasn't working, and I had to be able to pause and reflect on that and really look at what was going on to adjust what I thought was the right thing to do, and it was helpful for everyone.
Interesting. So far there seems like there's a commonality of flexibility, surrendering to what you can't control, but controlling what you can. Jessica, would you like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I can build on that. In that theme, I think being adaptable, which is the same, as being flexible, is really important, because I think especially when you have your mind set on something or you have a goal, and if you don't achieve that goal in the way that you expected, doesn't mean that you aren't achieving a goal, you know? And so I think that reframing the way that we approach our successes and discussing what that looks like is really important, not only for us as educators or you know, collaborators, but you know, students and teachers and that relationship. So understanding that it's just as a way to open a new opportunity is something that has really broadened my horizons when it comes to failures and obstacles.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that input, Jessica. And Dolly, would you like to also contribute? Great to have you here. But as you might still be working on your responses and your reflections, I definitely would love to discuss how could we use this with our students, right? So our students in the prototype phase, more than likely, usually will run into some obstacles when they're first generating when they're bringing their idea that they had in their mind down on paper and modeling it into something tangible. That process from moving it from your mind into reality is filled with trial and error. And it's important that we build perseverance, resilience, and you know, dedication, right? Reflection within our students so they can keep going to not only complete the challenge, but also build these skills in life. So educators, how do you see yourselves doing this with your students, or, you know, kind of like doing a model of this, maybe adding your own twist, you know, adding some creative elements like markers and drawings and things like that? Because, yeah. Wonderful. A great Dolly. I learned to listen to others, especially those with extremely different views from mine, really listening to them. Oh, wow, Dolly, I resonate so much with this. I'm still sitting with a conversation I had with someone on Sunday, and I really wish I listened more to that person. Who's trying really hard to empathize with me. So totally resonate with that, Dolly. I think, yeah, next time I'll definitely listen more. Okay, so yes, when we're, you know, with students and they're like, oh man, the first attempt failed, I give up. What can we do as educators? What I like to do is, well, we can start right now. So in addition to the activity we just completed for you to model and replicate however you see fit, is have like a data bank of quotes that I always go to quotes whenever I'm feeling stuck for motivation and inspiration. So I invite all of you to put your favorite quote in the chat about fear. And Jessica, I see you have one here from Michael Jordan. Would you like to read it?
Sure. Michael Jordan said, I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I can't accept not trying.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. One of my favorite quotes is, you never fail until you stop trying. Yeah. And then I also included this image here of success, which I didn't come across until my latter years of college. And so I think giving this to students who are in high school could really help broaden their understanding of success and journey. Thank you so much, Mayumi. May your choices reflect your hopes, not fears. Yes. Yes. And do you want to talk a little bit about that, Mayumi?
You know, it's one of those posters that I found when I was redecorating my counseling office, and I just love it. And I feel that I use it often for conversations, because sometimes our choices are a reflection of fears, and then being able to identify that And of course, not to say that you can just shut down fear, right? But being aware of that and being willing to take small risks instead of just completely giving up in that hope that you have.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's so easy to just throw up your arms and say, oh, I give up, especially when you're young. Yeah, be more mindful of your choices. I love that. Amy, can you read yours and expand upon it?
Yeah, the one I chose, I have a big poster in my room, which is, kind of common. It's the success is an iceberg, and you only see like the tip of the iceberg. You don't see everything that's gone into it. And this quote goes along with it. It says, we see trophies, not sweat. We see diplomas, not homework. We see performances, not rehearsals. And I think with my students, I try to get them, like, I'd rather have them build 3 things that aren't quite right rather than stick with one and then keep trying to add to something that's already kind of broken to fix it. And that's to get kids to kind of let go of something that they thought would work and isn't working, to get them on the path toward a better solution is a challenge. So especially with the younger kids, they get very attached to what they're doing. And so I always try to say, like, it's a draft, we're just going to ditch it and then do the real program. So.
Genius. Thank you, Amy. Yes, detachment, right? Detachment is huge on your way to success and in navigating failure. And we have Dolly. Thank you so much for this beautiful, timely quote. Fear is the absence of faith. Picked this one during the peak of COVID in 2020. Oh, that just gave me chills. I think that's absolutely true. Oh, yeah, and I think fear and failure go together hand in hand. I'm gonna just add one more here. There's an acronym for fear that I really like and think everyone should know. False evidence appearing real. So yeah, the acronym for fear, false evidence appearing real. Did that show up? Yeah, great. All right, cool. You guys did wonderful today. Like I said, feel free to take this activity, model it, make it your own, make it creative, make it huge, but tailor it around the prototype phase, because this is where kids tend to, feel discouraged, right? When all their hard work and the ideation and the understanding phase doesn't amount to what they expected, as you all were talking about. So it's get the quotes down, have your students come up with their own quotes, find their own quotes about failures and fears, and how to move past it, right? We're giving them tools, not just for JTIC, but for life. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Cicero, for leading us on that beautiful wellness activity that very nicely introduced us to what we're doing today, prototyping. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone that today we're doing the prototype phase. We have the pitch webinar coming in March, but the most important deadline is April 29. April 29. So I know some of you might be even still you're barely starting with the ideate phase, and that's fine. Some of you are super fast to move through the different phases, but all the pitches are going to be due on April 29. So feel free in the meantime to go back to any videos. They're all posted on the website. So reference back to the slides, to the videos. If you still need to catch up on any of the understand phase, the ideate phase, feel free to reference that. But the main deadline is April 29, when the video pitches from your students are due. And we'll give you more details on how long is the video, what does it need to have, the rubric, everything. We'll go over that before on March 14th. So again, the final deadline is April 29th. So just keep that as a reference. And on May 19, we announce the awards. And this year you also have the option to apply for the Photonics Innovation Award. So as long as the solutions combine solutions around solar, lasers, light, fiber optics, anything related to the photonics, they are going to be eligible for this award. And what we have seen in the past is that sometimes some educators might not feel that they have like the background, science background to dive into these areas, but what they did was like collaborate with a different educator from a STEAM background, and that's possible. So you can also always go back to we'll post it here in the chat, but you can go back to and see like the winners from last year. So you can also see what kind of projects they created. Jessica, can you see my website or screen?
Yes.
Oh, nice. Okay. So if you go under events, if you go to prior events on the 2022 Jacobs Teen Innovation Challenge, you can see the winners from last year. So if you scroll down to the area of Photonics Innovation Award, you can see 2 examples of the winning teams from last year. So feel free to reference that too. And remember that you can also post questions and comments as we are going through the webinar. If you're watching the recording, please email us with any questions or comments that you have. And we're gonna have Jessica lead us on a pool activity.
Yes, so we wanted to conduct a poll just to get check in with you all on your progress with the design thinking process thus far. And so we have 3 questions that are going to be popping up, and I'm just going to talk to you through the questions as they pop up. So the first question is, currently, where in the ideation phase are your students? So the answers are that we've started, we're almost there, we haven't gotten there yet. Now, we know that ideating takes time, and because in this phase, students have take what they learned in the understand phase, and they have started brainstorming solutions to these global issues. This phase enables students to create and shape lots and lots and lots of ideas, as we've discussed, and then they narrow it down into one solution. So it's quite a process, and I think that you've probably recognized that in teams, there's compromise and there's lots of communication, and there's a lot that goes into this phase. So we understand that it takes time. So if you could put those answers in, then we can go on to the next question.
So I launched the pool, so everybody should be able now to submit their answers.
Oh, all of them all at once. Great. Okay, so number 2, so number 2, sorry, my screen isn't showing it, is those of you who have started, have your students gain clarity on a solution to address a global goal. So we know that ideating takes a lot of teamwork and communication, and as the team members share their different insights, the solutions take different shapes. And as that happens, the solution evolves. And I'm sure at the beginning of the ideation phase, there were probably a bunch of individual ideas. And throughout this process, they should be focusing and narrowing down into this one concise solution. So I'm just very curious as to whether or not they've gained any clarity, and if not, we can always discuss, look at different approaches. Third question, ideating takes a lot of teamwork. Oh, sorry. Today we will address the next phase in design thinking, which is prototyping. And I wanted to know if you guys have heard of prototyping, because it's very much language that is specific to certain fields. Now, this all builds on what we were discussing And recently, our team hosted a weekend boot camp where students went through a really crash course fast version of what you guys are all doing with your students, but in 2 days. And we saw that when they started to do the prototyping, that they had one concise solution, but with many different aspects. So they took all of those ideas and worked them in a different way. So it's very interesting. They went from having a drone that collected waste to then partnering with companies and creating QR codes and then having recycling systems. And so they can grow, and this whole process ebbs and flows and looks different for every team and every issue. So we don't want anyone to be deterred if it seems overwhelming. So that's the poll.
Yeah, so I'm sharing the results. Jessica, can you see them now?
Yes. So the results we will just briefly discuss and then open if anybody has any questions, or we could always touch on it later if we wanted to finish, but and then discuss later on. But you guys said that 2 out of 3 of you said that you've started the ideation phase and 1 has not gotten there yet. And we understand that that the way that the process goes is different for everybody. And like we said, the only hard date is April 29th, and you can go throughout this process at your own pace because it looks different for everyone. So everything's good there. But we do want to encourage anybody who does have any questions or does come across obstacles or issues to, communicate with us. Look at the resources on Pactful. There's so many people who are willing to talk to, who have experienced it, people who are going through it right now. So I encourage you to use those resources. So for those of you who have started, have your students gained any clarity? No. This is interesting. It is so overwhelming. And just like what Tezeru did in our wellness activity, you can refer to this and use it with your groups and your teams and your students and say, okay, let's apply this. Let's do it for ourselves. Now let's apply it to our project. I would highly encourage you guys to try and take a step back to then regain clarity, because it is very daunting and there is so much information. And the beauty about this whole design thinking process is it's a circular process. As you see in the images, there are arrows and it goes back and forth, and you can make it all the way to prototyping and go back to understand, because there are things that we will miss. And that's why, it's so important to talk to students about the idea of obstacles and failure and how you pick yourself back up and you're like, okay, so that didn't work. What can we work on next to make sure that we don't have that kind of roadblock? So I'm also glad to see that for question number 3, everybody has heard of what prototyping is. So that's exciting. Is anybody willing to share if that was before? Like, have you heard of prototyping and understood what it is before you started this process? Or was it once you joined Pactful and started learning about design thinking? And you can put it in the text box or the chat box. But it's always interesting to know, because it's so different. It's a totally different approach to learning. And we get that it is difficult sometimes to approach things in a totally different way than what standardized education and a lot of students and teachers are used to.
My class is a STEM class, so we talk a lot about design thinking, and there's a lot of like back to the drawing board, so we focus on that at the start of the year. And I have students, I give them a task and we point out like how rare it is to go from like one idea to one final project, and how many times they adjust. And I make I make them aware that I ring a timer and I'm like, are you talking about it? Are you building it? Have you changed your ideas? And then we kind of track that behavior. So that's something that we ingrain in all of our projects. So my kids, it's a STEM class, so my students are pretty used to it.
That's amazing. I'm
Um,
glad to hear it.
Jessica, can I add something?
Please, 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 please.
I was just gonna ask Amy, is there any suggestions you would have for other educators that are having trouble helping their students like refine their ideas or like focus their ideas? Is there anything you would suggest or any activity from like the Go Narrow, sticker voting, or anything you would suggest?
I mean, I think this is such a big project for them to wrap their heads around. Like there's so much they don't know about it that by the time and everyone wants to rush to like build the thing and do the thing. So I might suggest like a shorter term. If you're going to design something, try a smaller project, like try to build a little paper bridge or so, you know, anything small, and then just get them to recognize that like their first idea is rarely what works. So I would kind of scale it down because there's so many parts of this that are hard for students to grapple with, like starting with like their lack of knowledge about the problems and like what solution might actually work. I've been showing them like examples of innovations, including those where it's like, this was a great idea, but it didn't work for the people it was designed for because. And so, you know, that was kind of the awareness phase that, you know, and you had the blind spots and all those videos on your website, which were helpful. But I think getting kids to slow down, especially with a project of this scope, it's the tough part. You have to put the brakes on it, but it's also really helpful. So I would scale it down to like a 1 class period activity where they recognize how important it is.
Thanks so much, Amy, for sharing. Jessica, I'll let you finish.
Do we have, Bianca, anything about the tea activity that we share with educators?
Like, what do you mean as far as introducing this?
Yeah, for like educators to use that as a way to introduce it.
Yeah. So Jessica is talking about we use a tea activity that is available in Packful. So in the it should be there in the drive in Packful. You have the tea activity, which can be used as an introduction to design thinking. And it's a fun activity for students to get introduced to the whole process of design thinking, because it goes through like the different phases of design thinking. So feel free to use that if you feel like your students need an introduction to design thinking, or feel free to reach out to me or Jessica and we'll be happy to also make sure you know how to access that.
So Amy put in the comments that she looked for it and could only find page 1 of the PDF. So we'll look into that, Amy, because it is a really cool, engaging, easy, straightforward way for students of like all ages and to be hands-on and interactive with what design thinking looks like as a hands-on activity, because they address a health problem and they have ingredients and they use the different ingredients and then they can work to make different teas and they try it and they get excited about it and make a name of the tea. You know, it's a really cool way that's hands-on, that's immersive. And so I would highly recommend doing something like that. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. You don't have to have a ton of ingredients. You could have like 5 ingredients and say it's like a 2-ingredient tea. You know, you can make it your own, but it's a really good hands-on way to like simplify and like put things into perspective of, oh, now we can scale this up to bigger problems kind of thing. So
thank you. Yeah, and we'll make sure you have access to the full version. We'll follow up on that. Thank you so much, Jessica. So this is the graph Jessica was referring to earlier. As you see, like the arrows going back and forth. So you might see the students as they are ideating, they find out that there's like a gap of knowledge. So they may have to go back to the understand phase, and that's fine, right? If they jump between the different phases, that's okay. Like that's part of the design thinking process and trying to design social innovations. So don't feel that you're falling behind. That's just part of the process when you see that there's some sort of of gap that you have to fill in. I know some educators might interview speakers, or they may have like a guest even, like from an organization, you know, like if you're doing like gender rights, maybe you have a guest from an organization that talks to students about like local issues that have to do with those issues. So feel free to do that to help students understand the problem more deeply. So today we're definitely going to go over the prototype phase. We have done so much talking around the prototype phase that I think you're already set to go, but let's take some time to review this. So the prototyping phase, hold on, here we go. Okay, so the prototyping phase means designing and building your solution and testing it with others to get feedback. And thank you so much, Cesaru, for helping us with this wellness activity of like having students and educators like emotionally be ready to try new things and not giving up, and trying different ways of testing your products, your services or products or policy ideas. So let's see how you would go about designing and building and testing a prototype.
You have an idea. Now, bring it to life with prototyping. The prototype phase is all about designing and building your solution, then testing it with others to see how it works. Your team will start by designing a 2D or 3D model to go from an idea in your head to something visible. Models will help you visualize what your solution will look like and how it'll work. They can be made with physical materials, like recycled plastic and paper, or they can be made digitally with graphic design apps. Then you'll use your model as a guide to build your prototype. A prototype is a simple and inexpensive version of your solution that works. It doesn't have to work fully or perfectly, but it should be able to be used by other people so they can test it and provide feedback. Once your prototype is ready, take it to the people who need it and ask them to try it out and tell you what they think. Based on their feedback, you may enter a cycle of redesigning, building, and retesting until your solution evolves into something impactful that meets people's needs. Building a better world happens by continually improving your solution over and over again. You have an idea.
Okay, so in the prototype phase, students design and build their solution and test it with other people to get feedback. And I think that's really important. So please focus a lot on getting feedback from users, and I'll explain how you can do that. But a main component of the rubric for their pitch is like, did the students gather feedback and improve their idea, their prototype based on that feedback from other people? So during the prototype phase activity, the prototype phase activities are divided into 3 categories: design it, build it, and test it. Let's take a closer look at each category. Impactful, we encourage students, teams to complete one activity in each of the activity groups, but it's up to you as the educator to guide them into like the options that best fits your needs. So we have the first 2 activities under design it category. In the activity 2D model, students have the option to use pen, paper, or a digital software to design their prototype. Some teams will create a product, which can be graph or sketch. Other teams may choose a service, and for this, they might choose to do a campaign, fundraiser, petition, or a website. Or even we have a team that is doing policy this year, which can be drafted using an outline, flowchart, or concept map. In activity 2, 3D model, students have the option to use craft materials. So those are like real craft materials, whether that's cardboard, pencils, markers, or using a 3D design program such as Tinkercad to prototype their solution. Next, we have the build it category, where you would find activities that guide students through building a working model of their prototype. And last but not least, we have the test it category, these are activities that help students test their prototype with other people. And I think, again, it's really important to reiterate that testing it with other people is of extreme importance, because based on the feedback, they have to create a revised revision of their prototype. If your prototype is a product, you can make the testers try out your prototype. If your prototype is a service or policy, the testers can select and review and provide valuable feedback for your plan. Using these resources and activities, we want to advance students toward prototyping and testing their ideas. So feel free to add any questions or comments that you have. Again, so these are the different activities that are available, impactful, under the to-do section. So please go in, look at the different activities, see which one fits better with what students are going to be developing, what ideas students are going to be developing and creating a prototype. And please, please, please test it and gather feedback based on other people. So gather feedback from other people and see how you can create a better version or iterate the version so that they're modifying their prototype based on the feedback that they're getting from hopefully from the user, right? So from those who are being impacted by the challenge, or just any other people, teachers, anyone who can provide them feedback. And we're gonna do a sample of one of the activities. Teseru is gonna help us do one of the activities here with you through a Jamboard. So I'll let you, Teseru, lead that.
Thank you. So in providing more modeling and engagement activities, we'd like to introduce you to a prototype activity that's a part of the Paxful curriculum, and that could be found online. So just as your students, as Bianca said, will be creating prototypes and evaluating them, Paxful itself is a prototype. And we are constantly looking for ways to make it better for educators, students, and communities around the world. So we'd like to take a moment to do this activity with you and generate some ways we, here at Paxful can grow and reiterate and reassess. And so this is something your students will be doing themselves and you'll be walking them through. So we're just modeling it. And so when it comes to Paxful, what do you like? And if you're not familiar with Jamboard, you all should have access to the link in the chat to the website through the link in the chat. And all we're asking you to do is click on that sticky note where Bianca's cursor is. That should pop up. And under what you like, you might want to consider, our communications. Like, what do you like about Paxful so far? Is it our communication styles, whether it's the webinars, the emails, the curriculum itself, the Facebook group that a lot of you are part of? And then I wish. So what do you wish you could see more of in Paxful? Is it becoming a part of the Educators Network? Would you like more? Do you wish to have more one-on-ones? Do you wish to have more support? And if so, how? Do you wish to have mentors? And then what if is the brainstorming part, the ideation, quote unquote, ideation part. It's when you offer some ideas or suggestions on how to bring some of those to reality. So yeah, I see you all are on there, which is great. So if you don't have any questions, let's jump in and let's just start. And this is all anonymous too. So great, I see someone already.
And I just want to
That's great.
mention also, Teseru, if any of you have not used Jamboard before, this is very good for students. If you want to do, if you're having challenges doing like a brainstorming session for students to come up with their ideas, you can just share a Jamboard, and this is like a free resource for anyone to use. And it's just like a brainstorming space for students, for anyone to come over. Basically here, we're just sharing the link and you just share the link. So there's no like sign up or anything required. So feel free to use this as a resource in your class too. And as Teseru mentioned, like this is we're using as the example, the Jacobs Teen Innovation Challenge. So any feedback that you can provide to us, that would be amazing.
And feel free to do this, contribute to each one at your own pace. So if you already did the like part, feel free to move on and do the I wish and what if. I will spend, just being mindful of time here. We're gonna wrap this up shortly. So just get all your ideas on there. We appreciate it so much. As I said, we're constantly looking for ways to make impactful, more accessible, and just better all around for everyone.
Thank you, Teseru. And for those watching the recording, I'll link this Jamboard to the email so you can also access that information. Do you want to make any final thoughts, Teseru, before we move to the next slide? On the Jamboard.
No, just you all continue, you all have access to this, so you can contribute at your own time and on your own pace. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. So we'll continue to look at the Jamboard. And again, for those of you watching the recording, we'll share the Jamboard so you can provide that information. Jessica, please.
So as you all know, throughout the competition, we have been and will be giving storyteller awards to the teams who share their progress on social media using the hashtag JTIC23. And we want to take a moment to spotlight some of our teachers who have been posting on social media and would like to encourage everyone to continue to share your progress using that hashtag JTIC23, because we want to continue to see the work your teams are doing and the, how your students are doing throughout the challenge, and just the power behind storytelling in general, and how you guys sharing this gets the information out there. It shares with other teens, other educators, the different approaches to education. So storytelling is a big deal, not just for Pac-Full and within the Pac-Full community, but for others. So next slide, Bianca. This week's shout out goes to Mayumi. Woo! We love these images.
Thank you.
We loved this. Yes, thank you so much. It's so cool to see the team working together and your Post-its and just like seeing the process and how you're going through it. It's just amazing. So thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate you, and everybody continue to share. Please, please, please. It's impactful.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, so you remember that you can share anywhere as long as you include the hashtag JTIC23. So this can include Twitter, Pac-Full, Instagram, and in our Facebook group. And Teseru has some amazing news for you.
Yeah, so what was formerly known as the Teachers Ambassador Program is now revamped into the Pac-Full Educator Network. This is an international community of design thinking educators like yourself. The network enables educators to share experiences, learn and engage current trends and research in education, and receive recognition within the wider Pac-Full community. There's different levels of engagement. Here we have the Pac-Full Educator Ambassadors, Pac-Full Educator Alumni, and the first-time Pac-Full Educators. We encourage you all to sign up and join no matter what level you're at right now. We foresee this being a very engaging, thought-provoking, community-building experience for everyone, and I will put the link in the chat. And I also want to say, back to the slide before, thank you so much, Mayumi, for sharing those pictures. If you guys would like to invite us out to your classrooms as you roll out some of the modules, we also love that. We love paying community visits to you all. So just wanted to throw that out there, and I'll put the link to the survey, which is super brief, in the chat box.
Thank you, Teseros. Yeah, so if you have any classes here in San Diego, Teseros is helping us with doing like visits classrooms here in San Diego. But if you're internationally, always feel free to email our team with any questions or any other comments that you might also have. So now it's time for our Q&A. Please let us know any questions that you have, anything that we can provide insight. I know that we went through like a lot of information tonight. So definitely let us know. Does anybody have any questions? Is there any in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourselves to ask any questions or any general comments?
No, thank you very much for everything. I'm curious about watching the videos for previous awards and learning more about projects related to service, right? In terms of instead of product. That's something that is, again, I'm just curious to learn more about that, to be able to adapt those ideas to this.
Thank you,
I just want to add, Mayumi, there's a school who's a group of students at a school who are interested in revamping policy as opposed to creating a product or something.
Yes.
So if you're focused on gender, that might be something,
Yes.
you know, you and your girls can look into.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, and if anybody wants to stay after and ask any other questions, I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody wants to stay after and ask any other questions, feel free to do so.